Disappointment, a scary moment. CJ Stroud speaks, stars emerge, and there's a lot to get into after day 4 of Texans training camp. Let's go inside the locker room now.
Yeah, it's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize.
All right, so we got a lot to get into. Day 4. In-depth notes here on what happened at Texans training camp. Now, we started it out with a little bit of disappointment. There were some scary moments as well. Most of you know it is the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610 in the Odyssey app. And I'm telling you now, I can't say too much, but you need to be listening to Sports Radio 610 tomorrow, let's say around between 11 and 11:40. Trust me, you don't want to miss that. Going to be good. Going to be very nice. That's all I can say. It's going to be good. That's all I can say. And I think you'll enjoy it. Appreciate everyone for coming through. It was an interesting day today. So today we had what we thought was going to be a padded practice. And as soon as the guys came out, we were greeted with disappointment because they had said Sunday or Monday. We assumed it was going to be Sunday. But now pads are supposed to come on tomorrow. We did not get pads today, although we did get some physical plays, including some scary moments. They said Sunday or Monday. I guess they decided on Monday. So there was no pads. Maybe they didn't want to be in pads in front of all the fans and stuff. So there was that. I'll get into the scary moments. And a lot of other stuff going on. Get the comments in, and we'll go through it. But let's just start. I'll go in depth with y'all because this was a fun practice because I didn't have to multitask and be on the air. So I'll just go in depth, play by play with y'all of what happened during team. And these are all the notes right here. You can kind of see. So I was watching every single play, and I'll just go through the important stuff that happened today, starting with a guy who was out. Christian Kirksey was off. I think it was a Veterans Day off, although he wasn't moving great, and he had a sleeve on his leg. Now, I know a lot of you, and I'm not separating myself from you because I'm kind of surprised that Christian Kirksey is still here. It seems like they like him, but I was really intrigued to see what the linebackers look like without Christian Kirksey. And quite frankly, they didn't look bad. And one guy specifically stuck out, and that's Brian Cashman. Talking that cash shit. It might be a real thing because Blake Cashman, excuse me. I said Brian Cashman. That's the dumbass GM for the Yankees. But Blake Cashman, he was all over the place. He had an interception of Davis Mills, and that was immediately after he broke a pass up intended for Brevin Jordan that was thrown on the opposite side of the field. So he had to run with Brevin Jordan. He comes back, and on the other side of the field, he gets an interception of Davis Mills. It was Davis Mills' second interception of camp. And later on, CJ Stroud on a probably I don't know if it was miscommunication or what, but CJ Stroud probably should have been intercepted by Cashman again, but Cashman ended up with 2 pass breakups and the interception. He looked great, and he's going to be on the squad. Special teams, very good in coverage. Primetime asks, is Wallow on the team? Pretty much, but Cashman is that reserve linebacker, and Cashman might be their best cover guy. Christian Harris, I know we have hope for him. Christian Harris, he had a play where Brevin Jordan caught the ball over him. It was Brevin Jordan's best play of camp on the right sidelines, a pass from Davis Mills. It looked like all he needed to do was kind of turn his head, and maybe he could have made the play. but he didn't. But this is where it's just Brevin Jordan, man. God bless him. Yes, Blake Cashman. I know I said Brian. I corrected myself. Blake Cash shit is what I call him. But Brevin Jordan, after he makes his best play of camp, limps off the field. He limped off the field and he never went back out there. So that kind of seems par for the course for what we've seen from Brevin Jordan. We don't see him make a ton of plays. When we see him make plays, it seems like he's gone. There. Yes, Blake. My bad. Henry To'o, really not a ton that I saw from Henry To'o at all. Didn't get to didn't see a lot from him. Nothing bad, but the pads are going to be where we're kind of going to get a little bit of Henry To'o. So before they did the team, they had some one-on-one drills. The highlights of one-on-one drills. Steven Nelson and Tank started it off. The left side on the left side, and Steven Nelson stuck him on the slant, talked some crap afterwards, and then Steven Nelson was walked over the sidelines. It wasn't like all in one motion, so I don't want it to seem like misrepresented. But he was talking to Cal and Hannah while he came out. But yeah, Steven Nelson's had a really good camp. He kind of stuck Tank, but there wasn't too much sticking going on with Tank. Tank was really, really good. You also had the one-on-one John Mechie versus Dez King. Mechie got the best of him, and it was one of those oohs, like the whole crowd on the route by Mechie went a little bit outside and then inside. John Mechie looks good. Again, these are one-on-one drills, so do with them what you will. But these are one-on-one, no help, anything. The receiver, really, a receiver should be getting the best of them on that, which is what happened with Primetime brings up Xavier Hutchinson. Hutchinson had 70-yard bomb, 50-yard bomb that he caught on Stingley, and he took it to the house. It was one of Mills' best deep balls, but again, it was just a one-on-one. It wasn't anyone else on the field. So Hutchinson took that. Another thing about Hutchinson that I think you might want to keep in mind on special teams, Hutchinson is the left side gunner with the first team. So I know Noah Brown with the Cowboys. He played a lot of special teams, and he was kind of like one of their blockers. And it's very clear that D'Amico Ryans loves Noah Brown, and we'll hear that in a sec. But I don't even know if they're going to have Noah Brown playing special teams on this squad, which is wild. I mean, it's a little bit different from what he's probably used to. He probably played some special teams at Ohio State. But Hutchinson is at least today, he was the first team gunner on the left side, which is pretty important for punt squad. And it's also a good way to keep a spot on the team on top of his actual receiving abilities, which have been pretty good. He had a pretty good day today. As far as team drills, again, I wasn't on the air, so I was able to follow the whole thing. It was a very active day of teams. So I mentioned that Kirko wasn't out there. Kirksey, I don't like calling him. I don't like giving him a nickname. But Kirksey wasn't out there. So you kind of wanted to see what the linebackers would look like. And early on, Davis Mills, he overthrew a deep ball. Then he had a near interception, close interception on the sidelines. The Scott Quessenberry is the starting center. Like, that's been a constant thing. Those of you like talking about juice and all that, maybe we'll see like what it looks like in pads. But right now, Scott Quessenberry is the starting center. Roy Lopez had a good day. He looked pretty good. He was kind of wreaking havoc in the background. There was an interesting defense that they had. They were running kind of a 3-3-5 at one point, where you had Lopez on the left side, and then you had, big guys on the big guy on the inside and bigger guys on the outside. But they were running a little bit of a 3-3-5, and I thought it was interesting that they had Roy Lopez lined up on the left end there. There was a play by C.J. Stroud. There was a play action pass where he kind of put some touch on it for about 15 yards to Tank, who had a good day. There was a really nice play by Tank Dell that was actually one of those vintage Davis Mills floaters over the middle. I think Davis Mills was trying to hit Nico, and he sailed it over Nico's head. He was clearly trying to get it to Nico. And Tank Dell, he had the wherewithal to, cut across the field, and he kind of made like a sliding catch for about a 23, 25-yard gain. So Tank had the catch from CJ, and then he had the sliding catch on the sail from Davis Mills. Dalton Schultz, this was the scary moment of the day. Dalton Schultz went across the middle. He's been one of the best players in camp. As he did, kind of seems like CJ might have, thrown it a little bit late, or kind of sailed it a little bit. I think it was CJ that threw it, pretty sure. Jimmy Ward ran into his right side, and Schultz was on the ground for probably 3 minutes. They were looking at his right side. He was kind of holding right here, but it kind of looked like he might have got hit in the right leg. But Dalton Schultz, he went off the field. He went and got some medical attention. You could see Dalton Schultz after when they had a break. They had a 5-minute break, I think, between team 2 and team 3. He was talking to guys. He still had his helmet, and he was kind of laughing, but you could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable. He wasn't the only tight end that got hurt. Brevin Jordan had a nice catch in the next team period by Davis Mills, kind of sailed it over Christian Harris. Brevin afterwards, though, kind of limped out. So the tight end position's kind of getting a little bit depleted. You have Quinturiano, who's not really not participating. You have Dalton Schultz, who got a little bit roughed up, and you have Brevin Jordan now. So it'll be interesting to see if those guys get off days tomorrow when the pads come on, which would be kind of a shame, because I would imagine they want as many tight ends as possible. But it could also be an opportunity for the other guys like the Mason Shreks and, some of their other depth tight end guys. As far as Schultz goes, D'Amico Ryan said he's going to be okay. He said it was just kind of a bang-bang play. I do find it interesting that Jimmy hit him by accident, because those guys, they've done some battles the last couple of years. If you look at, the way that the Cowboys season has ended, they've lost the last two. Dalton Schultz's last 2 seasons ended to the 49ers. And you got to think there's been some intensity between Jimmy Ward and Dalton Schultz when it matters most. So it was an accident, little bit bang bang. You probably don't want one of your most important offensive weapons getting hit when he goes across the middle when you're not wearing pads and he's not really expecting it. But it was just kind of one of those bang bang things, and Jimmy Ward just practices his ass off. On the next play, Singletary had a run where he kind of finished it, and Jimmy Ward came and punched it out. But Dalton Schultz appears to be okay. No word on Brevin Jordan. He kind of limped off. You then had CJ Stroud. He kind of sailed a pass left side over Mechie. One of the things that was interesting is they're kind of stacking guys on the right side and sometimes the left, where they have a guy on the line of scrimmage and then they have a guy behind him. And at times they're even lining up kind of the running back to the far left in the near slot area. And they're kind of working the screen game. It seemed like they were kind of doing that with Damian Pierce a little bit. You had the pass breakup with Cashman. against Mills, followed by the interception. Case Keenum came in. By the way, the offensive line, the third string offensive line for Case Keenum, awful. None of the offensive linemen were playing great, but the thing is, they don't have pads on, so the advantage kind of goes to the defense. At least that's what Seth Payne was saying. And it would make sense. But Case Keenum, one of his best tosses, and Davis Mills had sailed this pass over Nico's head, I believe. And then, CJ had the miscommunication with Schultz. Case Keenum threw a nice little post. He didn't have a good day, though, Case Keenum. He threw a nice post to Xavier Hutchinson, one of the prettiest passes of the day. However, he followed that up with his next pass. Probably would have been an interception if the defender had been looking. I think it was Hansen, number 35. Screen game with Dameon Pierce. Seems like Dameon Pierce has improved as a receiver. Still not as dynamic. It doesn't look as good when it's going with Pierce. M. Gentles, so accuracy was Stroud's greatest asset. Now he's inaccurate. No, he's not inaccurate. He missed a couple passes. He had some really good passes as well. So no, I wouldn't say he's not accurate. I think that would be a little bit dramatic. Interesting moment at the end of, I think it was team period 3. So there was a procedure penalty. The flag was thrown at the feet of Nico Collins, who didn't really have like a great practice at all. And after they get done with period 3, they walk and get some water. I think they get a 5-minute, 6-minute break. And Bobby Slowick called Nico Collins, and they spent some extra time together. So Nico Collins was kind of getting a talking to from Bobby Slowick. He wasn't like chewing his ass out or anything like that. He wasn't like yelling at him. But Bobby Slowick, whatever happened there, and there was the flag, and there was the couple passes that looked like maybe miscommunication. Bobby Slowick, little bit of extra coaching for Nico Collins for a couple of minutes. They went to special teams after that. Tank Dell, he's a fool with it in the return game. He's returning kicks. He's going to return punts. It's not going to be anyone else. And depending on how good he looks at receiver, I still think you put him back there. But just when he's running, you can just tell this guy knows what the hell he's doing. Tank Dell is having a really, really good camp. And quite frankly, he doesn't look little out there. He's a little guy. He doesn't look little out there. Now, that's a lot easier to do when you're not in pads. Tomorrow he's going to have his first padded practice as an NFL player, we think. But Tank Dell looks like a fool out there. So final team period, that was when you had the Brevin Jordan limp off, courtesy of a pass from Davis Mills. You then had CJ complete one over the middle with a collapsing pocket. Could have been a sack. I don't know. They weren't really blowing the whistle, but the pocket was collapsing, kind of felt it out a little bit. Then you had sack central at the bottom of the depth chart. There was a play where if there had been pads on and there'd not been, a red jersey on the quarterbacks, Jacob Martin would have killed CJ Stroud on one play. CJ was going back to pass. Martin was on the left side. He just kind of came right here, just ended up just running past him. But if it had been live, CJ Stroud might still be on the ground. And again, it was the reserve offensive line. So there's that. Kevin says, is he on kick return team also? Yes, he is. Tank Dell. You had CJ to Tank again, left side. So on this place, Tank's lining out outside. Like, the talk about Tank Dell just being a slot guy is not even like, it's not even close. He's lining up all over the place. He's lining up stacked on the back. He's lining up on the line of scrimmage on the outside. He's lining up in the slot. He's going in motion. So any talk about, Tank Dell might just be a slot guy, nah, at least not yet. He lined up on the outside on the left. Nice little out route between him and CJ Stroud. It's clear that they like each other. You had another Case Keenum near interception from Darius Phillips. And then you had the Cashman near interception of Stroud, which I've mentioned. Then you had Mills to Nico Collins and Mechie. Probably the best combo of the day. Probably the best day for Mills, but not awesome. He probably was a little bit better than CJ, but not by much. And then Harrison, practice ended. I saw some of you asking about Jerry Harrison. Jerry Harrison went down, and they actually had a couple of minutes left in practice, but I guess it was serious enough to where they just decided, all right, fellas, let's take it to the house. And they broke for practice. And after that, we got to hear from CJ Stroud. I'll give the biggest takeaways, but that's the in-depth summary. I know you guys, a lot of you guys aren't able to be out there. So I'll do my best to summarize and give you a little update on what's going on and what went down. But let's hear from CJ Stroud. So CJ Stroud met with the media for a little bit. I'll go more in depth on this and drop that video tomorrow before practice, probably at 8 a.m. So be on the lookout for that. By the way, subscribe, all that type of stuff. Number one source for Texans digital content in the building. But here was CJ, and I just wanted to ask CJ. So we know he's been at Ohio State. We know that a couple of years ago he was trying to win, really just kind of keep things going and replace Justin Fields, but he was trying to establish himself as the starting quarterback. Here was what CJ Stroud said about, and you'll hear my question about the difference in the man in 2021 and the difference in the man now trying to be the starting quarterback for the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a boy then, trying to be a young man, and now I am a young man trying to be a man's man. So I think I've stepped in here, and I think I've gained respect to the team. Just being myself, I haven't tried anything extra or done anything, and there's some similarities at Ohio State and some at the Texans now. But honestly, I think ultimately I'm just being myself, and I mean, I think everybody's gravitated towards that, and I think that's even more important than how I play on the field is being a leader, building that winning culture that we want here and swarming around, man, doing things that Coach Ryan's wants us to do, and Coach Slow on offense.
So there were swarm shirts being worn today. So we knew that swarm would be a theme. There were swarm shirts being worn today. Something else interesting that CJ said. CJ said that him and Petrie actually ride to practice together. I don't know. You got to ride with somebody. But yeah, Troy Harrison did get carted off. He's that was the last play of practice. But CJ Stroud and Petrie ride to practice together. So you've had Laramie Tunsil call him QB1. You've had Titus Howard say that he's here to block for him. You have Jalen Petrie riding to practice with him. It's kind of obvious that they like CJ Stroud, and I tend to I don't take everything that guys say at face value, but what the deal is there. Eric has a question. How concerned are you about Stingley? I've seen him giving up big plays. Not at all. I'm not concerned at all about Derek Stingley. I think he's going to be fine. He's going to be just fine. When they put pads on, I think there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. Again, without pads, the defensive line has the advantage and the wide receivers have the advantage. That completely changes whenever the pads come on. Then it goes to the offensive line because they can kind of get under you a little bit more. And it goes to the cornerback for the same reason. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. The pads should come on tomorrow. They were supposed to either today or tomorrow. They should come on tomorrow. a little bit of a disappointment. That was really the biggest disappointment of the day. Something interesting with D'Amico Ryans, and I think this is very clear. And I think if you follow this channel, we've talked about this. Noah Brown is going to be a guy that D'Amico Ryans likes. It's just obvious. It's hard not to. Didn't have over 40 catches at Ohio State his couple of seasons. Found his way onto the Cowboys roster with special teams and blocking. Took advantage of his opportunity last year, was second receiver on the squad, second wide receiver production with Schultz sprinkled in the middle. But D'Amico Ryans unsolicited mentioned Noah Brown again. And this is him being asked about OTAs and stuff. And just listen to D'Amico. It's really clear that he likes Noah Brown. And you'll also hear some of his other faves here in the locker room.
One thing I see from OTAs and from camp, it's those same guys who showed up at OTAs, they're continuing to show up in camp. And if you're going to be a really good team in the NFL, you have to be consistent. And so for me to see that consistency of guys like Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, to see their consistency, Damian Pierce, like that's what I love to see. So there's no surprises to me who's making plays out here because those same guys made plays when we were here in the spring.
All right, so there you go. He likes Noah. Hard not to like Noah if you're a coach. I mean, you got a wide receiver that wants to block. That's a rarity. Now, do you want Noah Brown to be your leading receiver? Probably not. But it's very, very clear that D'Amico likes Noah Brown. There is no doubt about it, like zero doubt about that. And he talks highly about Tank Dell as well, and that's because Tank Dell's a freaking badass so far. 4 days into camp, it's easy to talk good about him. Quite frankly, he's had a more complete camp than Noah Brown. I mean, as far as like complete, if we're just talking about the 4 days, Noah's been solid, but Tank has been a fool with it. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with Tank. A lot of stuff. And he's been really, really good about it. Mr. Robot, Noah Brown should probably start. He blocks the best. He has synergy with CJ. He can get us probably 600 or 700 yards. I don't know about the yards, but yeah. We don't talk about Xavier Hutchinson. He's a sleeper. We've been talking about him since they drafted him, sir. I say that with the utmost respect. Yeah, I mean, Hutchinson is a guy who's already the starting gunner. He had the long play against Stingley in one-on-ones. He had the post over the middle. He had a couple of other catches. He's a huge dude. One of the most productive receivers in the Big 12. And quite frankly, if you were just watching him and Nico blindly, I mean, I don't know if you would say that Nico's really that much better than him. It's tough to say. Nico, he'll have a deep ball here or there, but it just doesn't seem like I said, Bobby, he had the procedure and then Bobby Slowick had to talk to him. I would do that. Dice TV, what does watch blindly mean? It means you go in there without knowing anything. Like if you, let's say if you went, a lot of times you have your predetermined thoughts. So if I go to Texans practice and I see 51, I'm like, oh, that's Will Anderson. I know he's a badass. So maybe a mistake that he has, you're not gonna fabricate as much, or you're not gonna acknowledge as much. But if let's say someone that doesn't even know anything about the Houston Texans and doesn't know anything about the depth chart and doesn't know, that Xavier Hutchinson right now is down here and Nico Collins is up here. If you just went in there and you just watched those two guys play, it would be hard to decide. And it would be hard to say, well, which one of these guys do you think is better? If that makes sense. That's what I mean by watch blindly. Xavier Valade hasn't really stuck out. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't really stuck out. It seems like, the top two running backs are really clear. it's Pierce, and then it's going to be Singletary. I do think when the pads come on, and we assume they're going to come on tomorrow, we'll get a better look at these running backs. And that's what we'll see. Lamont says that Nico Collins is Lester Jean. I think he's Rudy. He practices very well. I look at him kind of more as a Rudy. Let's kind of reset the biggest takeaways of the day. I just gave you all the play-by-play. So the day started with the disappointment. Takeaway number one, biggest takeaway is the disappointment of no pads. Thought it was going to be pads, no pads, probably going to get it tomorrow, but disappointment was the biggest takeaway, one of the biggest takeaways of the day. Cash-ish, however you want to say it. Blake Cashman was cold today, and it was interesting to see what the linebackers looked like without Christian Kirksey. He clearly wasn't missed. Now, maybe when the pads come on, maybe when a real game happens, that changes, but the linebacking position, at the bare minimum, you didn't notice anything. But if I were Garrett Wallow, I'd be a little bit concerned right now because Blake Cashman is out there. He's covering guys. Should have had 2 interceptions today. Ended up with an INT and 2 pass breakups. He's already one of your best special teams players. Cashman appears to be one of those guys to kind of keep an eye on when it comes to potentially winning over coaches. He took advantage of this opportunity. Toto really didn't stick out, but he didn't look bad. Christian Harris had an okay day, not great. Kind of needed to turn his head on the pass that Mills threw to Brevin Jordan. But Kirko was out, and you really didn't miss him. And Blake Cashman kind of took advantage of the situation. Man, people do not like Kirko. Next takeaway, the scary moment. The tight end position has been stripped early on in camp. And I don't know how that impacts them. Maybe they're going to have to use some of these other guys. Maybe it's opportunity for these other dudes. But the tight end position has been completely stripped. You had Schultz go down with Jimmy Ward, which I'm Jimmy Ward might see blood there when because of their playoff matchups. Him and Dalton Schultz the last couple of games. I'm just kidding. Drow brings that up, but you had Schultz go down. D'Amico said he's going to be fine. Then you had Brevin Jordan make the best play that he's made of camp, and he's limping off the field. You already have Tegan Quitteriano on the sidelines. So the situation at tight end, it's very, very thin, and I don't know how that's going to look in pads tomorrow. And you also had Harrison go down. Andrew Beck had a couple of nice plays. They love throwing it to him in the flats. And they also had a couple of plays with the big ass dude that they just added, number 87. I can't even remember his name. He looks like a damn jackhammer. Help me out with his name. I just call him Big Ass 87. What is his name? Y'all know this. Whoever the hell number 87 is. Who they just signed, Tomlinson, Eric Tomlinson, out of UTEP. He's probably going to get a little bit more opportunity. CJ connected with him a couple of times. Kirko. Lamont hates the Kirko thing. I do hate calling him Kirko too. It's pretty rough. Tomlinson went to Klein. That's right. I heard. But you got to admit, without Mark Berman, those local things just don't get pushed too much. Other takeaways. So we had the depleting of the tight end position. D'Amico Ryans clearly likes Noah Brown. I think that's pretty obvious. That's one of his favorite guys. I'm telling y'all, man, like he's going to be a coach's pet type of dude. And in a good way, he earns it. It's not like the fake stuff, but D'Amico clearly likes Noah Brown. And I know the local TV folks are pumped about this. Tank Dell continues to look damn good, like really damn good. Tank Dell looks freaking fantastic. Outside, inside, motion, return game. Tank Dell, I go back to that like watching blindly. If you just went in there and watched these guys and you didn't have like the knowledge, hell, I don't even think if you didn't know that Tank Dell was 5'8", he doesn't really look 5'8" out there. Like the way that he plays. Again, we'll see what happens when the pads come on, but it'll be interesting. Rock asks if Tank is running with the ones. He is some. He runs with the twos some. I think they want him and CJ together. So when CJ was with the twos today, you had some Tank, but Tank's out there in and out with the ones, but he's running a lot with CJ, and CJ was with kind of the twos today. Although they were rotating the quarterback, so it was kind of like a little bit of a blend. I like this question from C Got Gas. As of right now, who's your number 1 to 4 receivers? If you were just asking, if we're just judging it on the 4 days, and I mean that's what we might as well do. If you were just judging it on the 4 days, who's been the best? I would say Tank, Mechie, I guess Nico, because he's caught a couple of deep balls, but I could go either way with him and Hutchinson. So God, I'll go with Nico, but Hutchinson is right there, and I think some people might disagree with me. So I'll go Tank Mechie, Noah Brown, and Noah Brown is ahead of Noah Brown's number 2. Like if you're just listing who's performed the best, it would be Tank and Noah at 2, and then you would have you could argue about Hutchinson and Nico, and then Mechie. And Mechie's lining up all over the place too. So the thing about, and I don't want to be, I know versatility is kind of sensitive here, but the thing about the Tank and Mechie is they can line up in more places than Nico. Like you're not putting Nico in the slot really. You're not throwing him, screens. At least you shouldn't. Oh yeah, Robert Woods. Robert Woods is good, but I don't think they're really like trying to work Robert Woods. Robert Woods, as far as performance, y'all just asked about performance. Robert Woods, like when the quarterbacks go to the side, like when they're by us during the show, Robert Woods is the guy that goes out there and works with them. But as far as like in practice, I don't want to say they're like holding off on Robert, but Robert, they're trying. Robert knows the system, so maybe he doesn't like need as many reps, but they're like doing like different stuff with the other guys. But Bobby, yeah, Robert Woods, if you ask me to put the depth chart of like for the week, I'm just talking about for the 4. Robert Woods has been fine. He's not doing anything bad. It seems like they're trying to get the other guys some stuff going on. So don't like think that Robert Woods is doing bad. I'm just talking about like making plays like in front of you. Those would be my 4. But yeah, he's straight. He's straight. Like Robert's straight. And he's the one that, like I said, when so between like halfway between practice, probably at like practice starts at 9, like at 9:45, they'll come over, they'll be throwing. And it's Robert Woods every time with them, but they're not trying. I don't think they're trying to do a ton of things with Robert. I think Robert's fine. So don't take that as, don't like say that I said that Robert Woods is like the 5th best receiver, just as far as like performance. Those are them dudes. Steven asks, you mentioned Mills had a better day than CJ earlier. Can you elaborate? It wasn't badass or anything like that. And quite frankly, Mills was the only one who threw an interception. Now, CJ probably should have. Cashman could have had it, but Mills Mills completed. He had the long pass. He ended practice really good. Let me get back out the notes. He ended practice really good to Mechie and Nico. He had a couple of good deep balls. CJ probably had the best like precision pass to Tank, but it wasn't like blatantly like awesome to where you would say, oh, there's like some sort of like edge. But he did throw the interception. So maybe you take away points on that, but it wasn't like any like huge ass gap. Just to be clear. Prediction for captains this year. I think Petrie's going to be a captain. That's my like dark. I think there's three. I would say Petrie, Tunsil, and I don't know, Weeks. That would be my predictions. I'm hoping Dalton Schultz is okay. He's fine. D'Amico said so as well. He just got a little bit of a love tap. AA asking about Amari Rodgers. Yes, that was mutual. It was going to be hard as hell for him to make the team. I actually don't dislike Amari Rodgers. I am glad that they're to the point where Amari Rodgers can at least get released, because last year there were times where he looked like the best effing receiver on the squad, like in certain like spurts. So I think that kind of speaks to the attention they paid at wide receiver. Like, you're still concerned about it, but they've at least gotten to a point where freaking Amari Rodgers is not, he's not a lock to make your squad. But yeah, it was kind of a mutual thing. I think Jonathan Alexander of the Chronicle reported that. Did I get a chance to ask D'Amico about his views on the roof open or close? Have not. We'll ask him about that, I'm sure, as time goes on, especially once the roof does open. I actually asked D'Amico how he spent his off day. And he basically said, I still had to do some work. No off days during the season, which you would expect him to say. That's D'Amico. But he said he got to spend a few extra hours with his kids. How did Kenyon look? Fine. The O-line wasn't awesome, but again, there's like an advantage. He wasn't terrible, but he was first team. Like, there were no mistakes about that. Did first team O with CJ look sharp or kind of sloppy? The offense hasn't looked awesome in this thing. What players, in your opinion, must have a good, decent preseason to avoid getting cut? Kurt Hinish. Kurt Hinish. Any of the running backs on the back end of the depth chart. Any of the corners. I think the corners are about set. So I don't know if we're going to have like any surprise corners. Safety's probably the same. Maybe Kirksey. Maybe. I don't know how they're going to treat that. The roster's a little like kind of set. Brevin Jordan's going to have to do something. He's going to have to be healthy, man. It's not, I know that it's not always your fault when you get hurt, but sometimes it's just kind of what you are if you get hurt all the time. And for him to make his best play at camp and then he's limping again. I mean, if Brevin Jordan's not in pads tomorrow, I mean, what are you even doing there? So I would say Brevin Jordan for sure is going to have to, and it's going to be interesting to see what the tight ends look like. How are the boys in the interior doing on both sides? Roy Lopez had a good day. He seems to be kind of separating himself from Hinish. I mentioned they have him on like the left side of the 3-3-5 when they did that. Roy Lopez looks good. Can't really tell with Quessenberry and Kenyon Green. But I would say Roy Lopez looks good physically, and he had a really good day today. JJ says Stutzy said Mechie looked like he could line up anywhere, and he is. He's lining up all over the place, says his Tank. Andrew says, is Hutch actually looking good, or is it just no pads on? I'm excited, Hutch and Dell. Should I be? Yeah, I think Hutchinson's good, man. He's looking really good. He's physically big. He's already on first team special teams. Hutchinson looks good. I'm actually intrigued to see what it looks like in pads. I think he's kind of just one of those like gamer dudes. He barely talks about Will Anderson. What are your takes about Anderson? I'll talk about Anderson. I said Anderson's one of the top 10 players in the AFC South already. By the way, speaking of Will Anderson, I told y'all 11 o'clock tomorrow. Be listening. You might hear him somewhere, maybe an Odyssey app, maybe in the loop. Who knows? Shout out to you. Check it out. Best Texans radio coverage, best digital coverage right here. Front seven on defense, the biggest question for me. Can we stop the run? Yes. Don't worry about that. This is not going to be what you've seen the last couple of years. The front seven is going to be better. So don't worry about that. They can stop the run for sure. Defense has actually been superior up to this point. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Who will be opposite of Will Anderson, Grenard, or Hughes? It's going to be Hughes, but I think there's going to be an interesting rotation. I think they're going to get real creative. Nick Caserio talked about lining Will Anderson up inside, right side, left side earlier in the offseason. So I would anticipate there might be some packages where we see Will Anderson and a lot of these guys lined up all over the place. But it's going to be Hughes. I would assume at least to start games. And the other thing about Hughes is if you just tell Hughes, hey, go get the quarterback, and you can kind of limit him too, it'll be interesting. But I'm a big Grenard guy at this point. I think people might be sleeping on Jonathan Grenard for sure. Who's first team at center? It's Quessenberry. Can't tell if he looks good or not, but Quessenberry has been the first team center. Pads come on tomorrow, and we'll see. Brown Chubby Bear asks if Lopez is making the team. I think so at this point. Look, last year, I think at camp, Highness was better, and why did he get rid of 69, by the way? Why did Kirk Highness stop wearing number 69? I don't know what he was thinking there. I should have kept the 69. But that's like his Popeye spinach, right? But I think Roy Lopez last year was kind of in like an awkward situation where the body transformation I think might have been a little bit too extreme. I think he might have trimmed down a little bit too much. And quite frankly, he was being asked to do too much. Like Roy Lopez is a good rotational player, and he can be a rotational player in the NFL for a while, but if you're asking Roy Lopez to go be your starting defensive tackle, like I know there's exceptions where guys get drafted there and all that, and they end up having success, but that's not what you draft. That's not the area where you draft someone to have to do that. And I actually think it might have made Roy Lopez a better player because you're asking him to do more than on a good football team you would realistically want him to do. And I think he got a lot of valuable experience. But if you look at his body now and you look at it and you compare it to rookie year, he's never been out of shape. Like the transformation last year was probably harder than the transformation this year, or it was somewhere in between. But right now he's just freaking yoked up and he looks like he almost has like a six-pack or something like that. Like he's huge. Like he's not too small. He's not too big. He's like huge. Like in the thirst trap stuff, you heard Malik Collins make the joke about that. I think Lopez makes the squad. I think it's interesting that they're lining him outside too on the 3-3-5. I don't know if that's going to be a thing or not, but yeah, I do. I would bet that Roy Lopez makes this team. I would say Heinisch might end up on the practice squad. But yeah, if I had to guess, I would say yes, but he's still going to have to continue to do what he's been doing. It'll be interesting. For sure. Luis says Griffin probably not making the team. Okay. I don't know about that. That would be interesting. I do think they have a lot of corner depth. So maybe it's not like massive contract. He doesn't look terrible, but yeah, I don't know if he's a lock. Steven Nelson's a lock. Stingley is a lock. Tavier is a lock. King is a lock. I think Griffin has a good chance. But right now, Steven Nelson's the superior player. It's not really even close at this point. Who are the starters on the offensive line at this point? It's Questenberry. It's Shaq Mason, who looks great. And it's Kenyon Green at this point. So we'll see what happens in the when the pads come on. Who's got the game in the headlock? That's me, sir. Cap says Sheldon Rankins probably slots in over Lopez, but agree Lopez is making. Yeah, if Sheldon Rankins in the head of Lopez, then what the hell are you doing? I know you're the Cap guy. Shout out to Troy, my man, my boy. No, you're right. Like if you give Sheldon Rankins 8 figures and he's not starting, that's weird. D'Amico said some really effing good things about him today at the podium, though. But I do think as a rotational guy, Lopez is good. Lopez is good, like as a rotational guy, and that's what I think he's going to be. But yeah, he's not starting or anything like that. But I think he's going to make the squad. Where do I think Jonathan Taylor lands? How does it affect AR? I mean, that's AR's best resource. I was actually joking with Cal today, Cal McNair. I said, and I was like, hey, you don't have to say anything to this. It wasn't like a press conference, just BSing before practice. I said, boy, you're lucky that Jim Irsay is in the league and you're lucky that Jerry's in the league. They just keep making you look better and better. And he just kind of laughed. But God, Jim Irsay, what an absolute idiot. Like, could you imagine if Cal McNair, if the Texans had Jonathan Taylor and everything was going, I mean, not great, but everything was going fine. I'm sure he wanted a contract to begin with, but unsolicited, you just decided to talk crap about all the running backs and then say all this stuff about Jonathan Taylor, a 65-year-old man that can't stay off Twitter. Could you imagine that? I mean, you got to be, if it weren't for Peyton Manning, and 3 things have allowed Jim Irsay to be where he's at. It's nothing that he's done. He can take credit for hiring Tony Dungy. Everybody was going to hire Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy was like one of the hottest candidates. There's 3 things Jim Irsay has done in his life to get him where he's at right now as the owner of the Colts. Number 1, he landed Peyton Manning. Number 2, he landed Andrew Luck. And number 3, he swam fastest from his dad's nuts to the top. That's it. Guy is a goofball. I know there was kind of like jokes about Cal and like Tommy Boy and stuff. That is Tommy Boy. That's Billy Madison. That's Billy Madison right there. That's what Jim Irsay is. He's an absolute bozo. And if Cal had done that, man, we would be hammering Cal McNair. What an absolute moron. Clayton Bigsby said, I seen you out there today. Next time, say what's up. Hit me up on social media. Got to talk to some subscribers, some looks. Now you're just being weird, Clayton Bigsby. You're banned, weirdo. Can we say the D'Amico effect is making some guys overperform already? I think it's too early to say that. People hating on Irsay. Yeah. Ryan talking about Stutz. Sources tell me Stutz got fired because he was getting illicit massages from Jake Asman and Brad Kellner. Stutz didn't get fired. Stutz left. He didn't like the situation that was going on there. He won't admit it, but yeah. I mean, he wasn't really able to do his own show. And quite frankly, I think he was doing a lot more than most and not really getting to present himself, I think is but yeah, Stutz didn't get fired. I promise you that. QB competition. Luis asking about Dylan Horton getting buzz. I don't know. I don't know about that. Jacob Martin looks pretty good. Dylan Horton there's a lot of people are seeing a lot of different things. I know Dylan Horton got a question. There was a random question someone asked asked Jerry Hughes about Dylan Horton. I think it was Cole Thompson, but I haven't seen anything from Dylan Horton. Like, amazing. There's still time. I'm sure. I mean, he's done a little bit of things, but I haven't really seen any of that. Zero, can people wait till the pads come on until we crown D lineman and no lineman? Who got crowned? Who got crowned? Have I crowned any D linemen yet? Roy Lopez. He had a good day, man, and he looks physically good. He looks a lot better than Heinrich. But we can see what happens with the pad. Sure. I don't know who got crowned. At all. We need Stoots Landry show. Are you watching the Hall of Fame game? Yeah, I'm gonna watch everything. No idea. God, he did. Talking a little boxing, he did. Spence got his ass whooped, man. I thought he was gonna handle it out. I thought Spence was gonna get it. But it is what it is. Didn't mean to put that one up there. Questenberry needs to be banned to an alternate dimension even before they put on pads. Hold off on that. Like I watching Questenberry last year sucked. Let's see how he does on the pads tomorrow. Mr. Robot, let's give him one padded practice. Everybody says, like, people say that this scheme fits him better. Like the nerds, not me. Y'all guys know I'm not going to pretend to like study the trenches and the hardos. I'll tell you what I see, but let's give Questenberry the pads. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see what he does for real. Let's check that out because I think it's too early to completely dismiss Questenberry. And I know there's some people that are kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Like out on Questenberry, understandably, it was bad. But let's just see what he does. I don't want him starting. I want them to have upgraded no matter what. But he might be able to be a good backup center. Let's at least let Questenberry have that. At least let him have that. And we'll see what happens. Should be fun, though. So looking ahead to tomorrow. Tomorrow, again, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. I know y'all love In the Loop interviews. They're the best. Best in town. Patting myself on the back, but they are. We allow you to get to know your players after they leave the podium. You've gotten to know Jimmy Ward. You've gotten to know Dalton Schultz. You've gotten to know Dameon Pierce a little bit more. Tomorrow, we're going to get to know someone very important. 11 o'clock. So you will be able to check that out at 11 on the Odyssey app, and it will be really, really fun. Really fun. So the pad should come on tomorrow, so we should get a look at that. Let's be on the lookout for if Dalton Schultz gets a day off, if Brevin Jordan is back out there. Let's get a look at what the running backs look like, what the offensive line looks like. I know some guys don't want people crowned. Is Christian Kirksey going to be out there with the pads on? What does that look like? I know he's kind of like the least favorite of everyone. And who gets the off days? It will be really, 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 really fun tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to speaking to y'all. Appreciate y'all for coming through. It's been a pretty eventful camp at the beginning. Team was insane today. Hoping that tomorrow it's even more active because it's going to be intense. They're probably going to be doing a little bit of that short yardage stuff and whatnot, going to get physical. Although it got physical today, seems like you avoided a scare with Dalton Schultz, and he's going to be all right, but we will see. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Do me a favor, please. Subscribe, like, ride along. We've been doing this. Broke 1 million views, by the way. Broke 1 million views. we're well into the 5,000 subscriptions. So keep it rolling. Keep the likes coming. I very much appreciate y'all. That's the in-depth breakdown. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for asking the questions. It's been a fun time. Oh, asks if I've been a coach before. What is that? Coach like kids in basketball and Pee Wee football like once, but nah, I don't know what the hell that means. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Y'all take it easy. Remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in this together. Pads on tomorrow, we think.
On YouTube, we got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways, if it's up, then it's up, we number one, you don't need to try your luck, Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too.